Tiffany, hello.
Cat, hello.
Were you exposed to the emotional trauma that was Fern Gully, the last rainforest, as a child?
Oh my god, yes, I absolutely was.
Did Captain Planet haunt your dreams? If you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you were probably exposed to tons of fictional movies and even documentaries decrying deforestation,
Uh-huh.
usually of the South American rainforests, that
Uh-huh.
showed dire consequences for innocent wildlife like speaking bats, and eventually the stupid humans who shoot themselves in the foot by cutting down trees.
Mm-hmm.
I always see it's like those disembodied, it's like all you see of the logger, you don't see their face, but the guy who's cutting down the tree, it's his hard hat and his boots and his gloves.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow he gets destroyed. But
Yes.
anyway, you are also probably currently aware of several high profile carbon offset programs from large corporations like,
Oh yeah.
say, ExxonMobil or Boeing or Volkswagen.
Fuck Boeing.
Yep.
Fuck them all. Go
Fuck them
ahead.
all. They might plant a tree on your behalf for every car you buy or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You probably feel good about tree planting programs in your heart because Fern Gully convinced you that it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm here to kind of bust your bubble about large tree planting programs. Sorry, 90s kids.
Sigh.
Welcome to Greening Up My Act. So, sorry, Tiffany, I know that's probably a downer to start out with to bring you back to Fern Gully. Have those memories return to you.
That was one of my favorite movies, actually.
Of course it was. They got us.
So good.
So heartfelt and moving, but like,
That freaking Batman.
I know. My mom talks about how before Disney, people didn't care about animals, and then all of a sudden animal rights happened. And we were indoctrinated as children by like the fear of environmental disaster. You know, like they said,
That's
like after the
interesting.
movie Bambi came out, people quit registering for hunting licenses. But I think, after Fern Gully came out, or, any of the movies that we watched in the 80s and 90s, all of a sudden every little girl wanted to be a marine biologist.
I
You
wanted to
know.
be a marine
Yep.
biologist.
Where
Oh
did it
my
come from? Lisa Frank? I
god.
don't know. But
So
also,
funny.
we all knew that tearing down forests was evil and was going to ruin
Mm-hmm.
the planet. And, there's rock songs dedicated to it. And yet, what has changed? Anyway, so
Wah, wah.
wah, wah. We're going to talk about tree planting programs and the band-aid that they are
Okay.
in
Yeah.
this episode. But I think first perhaps you could tell everyone who the hell are we?
Yes. So we are Greening Up My Act. We're two podcasters.
Yes, full-time podcast. Just kidding, not full-time.
As you may have guessed.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have actual full-time jobs as marketing writers.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been doing it for a long time. So we kind of understand like marketing fluff and what companies will say and brands will say to make themselves look better, make themselves look a little bit more green, a little bit more sustainable, or a lot of it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to dig through the fluff and unfluff it, I guess.
Yeah, unfluff green hooey.
Yeah, we call it green hooey, but
Mm-hmm.
greenwashing is
Mm-hmm.
another term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're also just normal people trying to figure this stuff out for ourselves.
Yeah. So we have talked about things you can do as a person to live a more sustainable life, but also this episode is more about kind of being aware of what's
Mm-hmm.
going on. I hate to say it, you're not going to be able to control corporations, but I think it's good for us all to kind of understand why tree planting programs are not the solution to climate issues and to our carbon problems.
Yeah, and like a lot of companies think, oh, if I do this, then I'll get off the hook for, my contributions to, if
Everything.
you're Exxon, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So it is, yeah. So that's really interesting because it's like we need to hold these fuckers accountable,
Yeah.
but we
And
don't
then,
even know that we need to do it
yeah,
because they have
we
all these
think we think it's under
programs.
control, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's tree planting programs are there's good and there's bad. I'll say that.
Okay. Okay.
So okay, now I'm gonna talk about my sources. So we're supposed to have 5. I think I had 6. I just kept. I'm like, this probably needed to be a
It's
longer
a
episode.
big one though. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is going to be skimming the top. A
Yeah.
lot of the things that I tell you about here, I think you should go read these articles. Especially a couple of them are really, really good in depth and explain a lot. So it's worth a read. But yeah, the first one, I would say the Yale Environment 360 had our huge tree planting programs more hype than a solution. For really in-depth and a really good report, I think Science News had Why Planting Tons of Trees Isn't Enough to Solve Climate Change. Then I also had Carbon Brief Analysis, How Some of the World's Largest Companies Rely on Carbon Offsets to Reach Net Zero. I didn't go as in-depth on that because carbon offsets are not just tree planting programs. Tree planting programs are just part of that.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah. And I don't think I even scratched the surface in this. So we might have to do a whole other thing on... I think in our activism episode, I think we should... Or activism season, which is coming up soon, we should do a whole thing on carbon offsets. But
Yes.
then we had the U.S. Forest Service Plant a Tree program, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, The Power of One Tree, the very air we breathe. EcoTree had a really in-depth science article about how much CO2 does a tree absorb. And then Deep Root, I just touched on them briefly, but how much should you water your tree?
Okay.
So, but yeah. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Tree planting programs, large-scale tree planting programs. These are usually government-sponsored that attempt to reforest the world to cut down on carbon emissions through carbon capture. Higher profile ones are sponsored by billionaires like Salesforce's Mark Benioff. So they've got a lot of... There's a couple programs called like 1 Trillion Trees. A whole bunch of programs out there that are trying to find ways to plant trees to soak up carbon emissions, basically.
Okay.
And reduce global warming. Because the big issue is that, we've already increased global temperatures by 1 degree Celsius, and through man-made issues. And people will argue, oh no, it's just a cycle of the Earth. But most scientists, and I'm not saying that science is never wrong, but most scientists agree that this is human caused, and that if we heat,
like 99.7% or something.
yeah. So if we go another 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer, there will be even more devastating consequences. So, it's an interesting thing. The Science News article pointed out that trees are kind of having a moment right now. Like because people fucking love trees. What's not to love? They're great.
Yes. Well, we had that episode where I was
Yeah.
like, I can't handle planting another thing.
And everyone was like,
Can't handle
fuck
planting
you! Plant trees! People love trees. They're great. Trees are great, and they're wonderful. Especially,
To be clear, nobody said fuck you, but
No,
yeah.
okay. I was kidding. Yeah, sorry. Susan did not say fuck you.
No, everybody was very nice.
Yes. And yeah, trees are great. And there's also, these municipal projects and localities will subsidize tree planting for homeowners and other or large landowners, so people who own like shopping malls and stuff.
Yeah, I've looked into that, and we don't own enough land.
Okay. Yeah, I got free trees from a local program, and
Yeah, we have like a county. You can get one a year or whatever.
yeah, you can get a free tree, but I don't get a subsidy for it or anything, but I don't mind because it's cool.
Yeah.
So, okay. What eco-friendly claims are they making? Trees are good, right? The biggest claim is that trees are the best way to capture carbon emissions to slow global warming and the effects of climate change. So I'm just going to quote the Science News article. Trees are already kind of negative emissions, quote unquote, technology, and many researchers see them as the first line of defense. In its January 2020 report, Carbon Shot, the World Resources Institute, a global nonprofit research organization, suggested that large and immediate investments in reforestation within the United States will be key for the country to have any hope of reaching, quote unquote, carbon neutrality. They didn't say quote unquote, I say that, in which ongoing carbon emissions are balanced by carbon withdrawals by 2050.
Okay.
So that report said that the U.S. government should invest $4 billion a year through 2030. So like quit funding Ukraine war and invest tree restoration projects across the United States. Those
Is
efforts
that
would
what
be
they're saying?
that's what they want people to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and eventually, hopefully, that we could come up with more technologies to remove carbon from the atmosphere. Right. That's their ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the USDA, this little blog that I post in there, in 1 year, a mature tree will absorb more than 48 pounds of carbon dioxide and release oxygen in exchange. So carbon
Okay.
ring, like carbon dating, but with
Mm-hmm.
tree rings that are made from carbon, right?
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and then go into the Eco Tree article because it explains it more in depth. And like biologists are gonna be like, "Shut up, Kat! You don't know what you're talking about." You're right, I don't. EcoTree says it's on average 25 kilograms of CO2 per year. It depends on the type of tree, how mature it is, and it can range anywhere from 10 to 40 kilograms per tree per year over its lifetime,
Oh wow.
which is still a lot. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Science News broke that down and like, what does that mean? So, Earth's current forests absorb 16 billion metric tons of CO2 annually. And we have about 3 trillion trees on the planet currently. But deforestation from and logging, as well as burning wood products, creating paper, all those things, so wood related industry re emits 8.1 billion back. So
Okay.
we can even it out to say about 7.6 billion tons of
Okay.
carbon are absorbed. They
Yeah.
based on that. The carbon neutral point there is 7.6 billion tons is absorbed by trees every year. That's 1/5 of the 36 billion tons that humans emit on the whole
Each year.
each year.
Interesting. Okay.
So trees do 20% of the work, right? Which is great. Other benefits of trees: they give us fruit, they provide nuts, they provide shade, which is really important in Texas, and they reduce runoff. So we love trees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just to make it clear that we love trees.
We do love trees. I love trees. And, a lot of it's a big issue in Texas, for instance, that we need trees around bus stops so that there's shade when you're waiting because it's 105 degrees and people will
Yeah.
expire waiting for the bus.
Yeah.
So that's important. So, yeah, trees are ecologically very important. It does make sense that we would want more trees. And I think now is a really good time to take a break before I break
Okay.
your heart. So let's take a
Oh.
break. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Welcome back. Okay, so our next segment that we've been doing this season is, does the Earth Friendly message need to come back to Earth? Uh-huh. Yep, it does. There are a lot of issues with tree planting. Okay, first of all, it makes us feel good inside because, yeah, yay trees, they do a lot of work. But it also takes our eyes off the really harmful stuff, like emitting carbon. So if we feel like we're planting enough trees and we plant 1 trillion trees, it gives the oil and gas industry cover for continuing to drill for oil and gas and create cars and trucks and things that are just emitting that 36 billion kilograms of CO2 every year.
Yeah,
So
and aren't as efficient as they could be, is what I heard.
exactly, it just makes us feel good about it, right? It also takes our eye off the prize of preventing deforestation.
Yes.
So stop slash and burn, stop cutting down trees that exist. And this goes into another issue. Most of the retree programs that and in the Yale article and the Science News article, they quoted one, and I should probably just look it up to tell you what it was, what the name is. I believe the scientist's name was Cawthorn. He came up with this plan, and he said, here are all the places in the world that we could plant trees, and we should do this. But the issue was, that plan is extremely biased towards colonialism. Okay, it's like a white man savior thing, right? So they're like, oh, places in Africa and Pakistan should plant all these trees, but those places may already have natural savannas or prairies. So no regard to the existing ecosystem, right? Furthermore, no regard to the economies that already rely on that. So there's no regard to what just planting a bunch of trees will do to the existing culture. So one of the examples I used in a Pakistani tree planting program, it displaced thousands of tribes people whose animals grazed on that land that was no longer available because of trees, right?
Oh my God.
So a lot of the tree planting areas are used for livelihoods like farming or agriculture, and removing those can wreak havoc on existing economies and remove much needed food programs. So you're starving people to death to make rich colonial countries feel better about trucking everything and flying everywhere, right?
God. Not to mention if you're cutting prairies down. Prairies are vital.
Huge. Those existing ecosystems. Yeah, I'll get into that a little bit more here too. So another issue is tree planting programs champion acacias and eucalyptus trees, which grow quickly in numerous climates, but they still take a lot of water. So, for instance, some blame them for water shortages in countries like South Africa because the trees get all the water.
Oh my God.
So in South Africa, they've been trying to remove trees from wetlands and water conservation areas because they've been in a drought for the last 10, 15 years. It's been really bad, and it's because the trees that people have been planting, ignoring the local ecosystem, have been sucking up all the water. I mean, that's part of it. There's other reasons why they have water issues, but it's a thing people don't think about.
Yeah.
So a tree, how much you need to water a tree or how much water a tree will take depends on how mature it is, the type of tree, the climate, etc. To keep your trees at home alive, they recommend several gallons per week, several times per week, especially for new baby trees. And they have a whole list of how often you should water a tree, which can be eye-opening if you're thinking about doing a tree planting program at home.
Yeah, I was going to say I do not water my trees that much, but some of them die.
If you have rain, if you have rain, like you're supposed to water at least 3 times a week, like 2 gallons.
Wow.
Yeah, I probably water my fig tree once a week, which is not enough. Mm-hmm. They noted that during periods of drought, though, trees have been measured to take in as much as 150 gallons in a day. So they will take the water if it's available to them and not let natural existing water systems have it.
That is so interesting.
So just championing just any tree will do is not true.
In any
environment.
Ecosystem.
Yeah.
Wow.
Australian trees should not be in Africa. So the wrong trees in the wrong places contribute fuel for forest fires as well. So in places where there weren't trees before and you plant trees, you have a forest fire problem, especially if it's in drought, right? Mm-hmm. So those are devastating, especially to emerging or not emerging economies. Yeah, I guess emerging economies, we could say, like developing nations that don't have the resources to fight forest. I mean, in America, we're supposed to be top notch, and we can't even fight forest fires. Imagine in a place where there's not organized infrastructure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, the other thing is savannas and grasslands and prairies don't get enough credit for the carbon that they hold.
Yes.
And when you account for removing their ability to do so by planting trees instead, you reduce the actual amount of carbon that trees really take out of the air, right?
Right.
So as much as they say it could be even 20% of original estimates.
Wow.
So all that good work you think your trees are doing is even reduced even more because you're removing natural ecosystems that are already doing that.
Okay.
So the best route, they say, there is some hope in this, forest regrowth. So previously existing forests should be replanted, right? The issue is that when a corporation does a carbon offset through tree planting, they're probably planting single tree commercial crop, quote unquote, forests. These are considered forests, right? But they're not a forest in the same sense that a natural, like the rainforests in Oregon are, right?
Yeah.
With an understory and all of this other thing, all of the other biology that happens in a natural growth forest does not happen when you intentionally plant one type of tree, right?
Right.
So, and actually, they say that these single tree commercial crop forests appear to release more carbon than they catch because of the
Ah.
maintenance and all these other things. So, um, an article by a scientist named Fleischman in Bioscience boiled down the lessons to this. You need to know something about the place where you're planting trees, the political dynamics, the social dynamics. It's going to be very different in different parts of the world. That's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying probably if you're thinking about tree planting programs, think globally, act locally.
Mm.
So the other thing that they were saying was that while there are all these problems with large scale tree planting programs, the one thing they do is open the public's eyes to it's like a gateway drug, basically, to other ecological systems. So, we have a Plant 1 Trillion Trees program that can also open people's eyes to, let's reduce our energy consumption. Let's find greener ways to produce energy. Let's cut down on carbon emissions through airplanes, and let's tie the tree planting program to other ways. If we say tree planting programs are great and we educate people on the fact that they're not the full solution, we can motivate people towards other solutions, because people are always going to like trees. There's no anti-tree program out there. There's not a political movement that's like, fuck trees, right? People love trees. As a species, we love trees. So if you use trees as like the banner that you fly and then you get the armies to rally around you, you can do a lot more.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. So all this to say, yes, large-scale tree planting programs are cover for corporations to behave badly. If a major corporation that contributes to carbon dioxide emissions, like spit in their face when they tell you they're planting a tree every time you buy a ticket, let them know that that's not going to work. They need to be working on reducing the need to cut down trees in the first place. They need to be working on reducing the carbon output by whatever method that they have. They need to fix it. The problem lies with prevention, not,
after the fact.
right. We can't put this tree Band-Aid on our climate issue.
And what I had heard was that a lot of the programs it's like because the people, maybe, are you going to get into it more? Because I don't want to.
No, I think that's about all.
Okay. Well, I was going to say what I had heard is like a lot of the programs are run by people who don't understand how, like, they're not professional.
Yeah.
In terms of, they're not professional gardeners. They're not professional whatever. They're just like local people who
foresters.
Don't really know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most
who,
of the programs
don't really know how to grow a tree.
Right.
So they die.
That was something they were talking about in the Pakistani program. Farmers were like given a subsidy for planting trees, and then after 5 years they could cut it down and use the lumber.
Right.
So yeah, it sounds cute, and I think that if you're a homeowner or you have land and you can plant a tree, a local native species that you can take care of, absolutely, that's great. 100% do that, and it'll help your locality. It'll provide shade. It'll reduce runoff. It'll offset some carbon emissions. But don't expect that Mark Benioff's tree planting program is going to save the world. It's not.
Right. And for a couple of years, people were talking like, "Oh, this is the solution." Because
Yeah.
it's sort of like the math. If you think about it mathematically, it's like, okay,
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot
mathematically
of,
it makes sense, but
yeah, but it's still what we need to do is if we really want carbon neutrality, we have to reduce our carbon output
mm-hmm.
by 80%,
Right.
right? So if we're only putting out 16 billion tons a year and not, then we'd be neutral.
Is that
But
thunder again?
yeah, it's thunder's raining again
I
here.
hear it.
We're having a thunderstorm here in Austin. There
Again.
are,
Not
yeah,
again, but still. It's the
yeah,
same
still, it's the same night. I'm still wearing the same. Go Georgetown, go Hoyas.
night.
Um, yeah, there's all kinds of programs out there, and this episode is a lot shorter because we haven't chatted as much.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting, like carbon sequestration programs with the ocean. The ocean holds a lot of carbon, which is
Yeah, and also a lot
fascinating.
of heat, which is a
Yeah,
concern.
which is a problem. And that's a problem
Yeah.
is we kill off the wildlife by doing it. And,
Mm-hmm.
as the planet heats up, a lot of trees will die too. So
Mm-hmm.
that Band-Aid gets washed away in that, scenario as well. Have
Yeah, because
you
I'll tell you, I had 3 baby trees in my yard, and
Yeah.
2 are currently alive. 1 I just planted last year, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's like very hard to keep a little tree alive.
It is. You have to take care of it. And I mean that's why forests are so fascinating because they do it themselves.
Mm-hmm. And they talk
Um,
to each other.
Mhm.
The trees, I read a book about this. Like the trees actually communicate through mushrooms.
Aspens, yes, through fungal networks.
It's so
Aspens
crazy.
aspens all have the same root and they communicate through that as
It's
well.
wild.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Trees.
Amazing.
So there have you heard of a book called The Overstory?
No.
It's by Richard Powers. And I'm looking it up real quick. It came out a couple of years ago and I read it and it won did it win the National Book Award? It won it may have been a Pulitzer.
Okay.
And Bill Gates even has an article. He said this novel changed how I look at trees.
Oh, wow.
But
You said it's Overstory?
the overstory, because that's where I learned the term. The understory is all the things under the trees on the forest floor, all of the
okay.
ferns and the mushrooms and everything. So the overstory is about trees and climate change and how much work they do. But one of the things that he posits in the book is that the future of climate action will be forests' rights.
Mm.
So if we think about, again, I started this episode talking about animal rights.
Mm-hmm.
We now think that animals should not be brutalized, right?
Right.
And that is changing how our generation sees factory farming, and
Mm-hmm.
pets even are treated different. There's animal rights are something that our generation believes in, and I believe the generation after us will
Yeah, we
take
take it
as
very
common
seriously.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah,
they will think that
yeah.
that's, and my grandparents will kind of be like, "What do you mean the dog has rights?"
Yeah.
But that is something that forests have rights will be a new legal field, and that so when you start arguing for the rights of a forest to exist, then that changes how companies have to interact, and that I can see my old boss at the company I used to work for being like, what? That's nonsense.
Yeah.
But I think from the trajectory of how we understand things work, I think that will be a very legitimate legal field.
Wow. Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, you can't replant a forest and have those trees talk to each other. It's like it has to have
Natural.
been there
Yeah.
for a long time.
Conservation is, yes, and generations. Yeah.
That is fascinating. I love that so much. And I feel like that's sort of starting to become part of the rhetoric because I've heard a couple of things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think Greta
lately.
Thunberg talks somewhat about global ecology rights. But if we
Okay.
talk about the rights of coral reefs,
Yeah.
why not? Or
That
of
is
entire
so-
forest organization or organisms to exist. Yeah.
Right.
So that changed.
Wow.
That was the part of the book that I took most. But, in the book, he also talks about how beneficial trees are for us. I mean, we talk about forest bathing as kind of like you need to go out in the woods. But the chemicals that trees emit, I mean, we forget that human beings evolved in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so trees contribute to our well-being.
Yeah.
And not just because they're pretty and they provide shade. There's all kinds of unspoken communication through pheromones and chemicals that happens between us and our natural environment. And when we have
Yeah.
removed ourselves from that and removed those natural elements, we are not just harming, like, we're not just creating climate change and global warming, we're actually literally harming ourselves on a
Yeah.
individual day-to-day basis.
Yeah, because
And
isn't there evidence that having dirt, like getting dirt under your fingernails, is like healthy,
beneficial.
For
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot. With bacteria, like immunity. If your house is too
Mm-hmm.
clean with bleach, your kids will have horrible allergies and infections all the time. Like, we need dirt. We've evolved in any, and I'm not saying like don't treat them with antibiotics, natural is best. No, I do believe that medical intervention, like modern medical intervention, is important, but it's also, you know, like the gut biome and our mental processes, all of these things are interactive with sunlight. And, you know, there's a thunder. God is saying so. Just kidding.
Well, that's
Nature is agreeing with me. So, like,
crazy.
we ignore this at our own peril. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, tree planting programs are kind of dumb, but they open up a lot of good, important questions.
Interesting.
I think it also, we have to think of it on a, you know, think globally again, right? Like, plant
Mm-hmm.
trees, and yeah, go to the Arbor Day Foundation and donate to them so they can reforest and
Mm-hmm.
conserve. You know, talk with your local forestry department about the work they do, because they'll tell you forest fires are actually beneficial. Problem is when they
Right.
get out of hand
Yeah.
because of all of the shit we do to forests, you know.
Yeah, and all the people that are living around it.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, let's consider that. Let's consider keeping the trees we have and helping them come back more than
Mm-hmm.
just, let's plant a bunch of trees in Africa. You know, like, shut up,
Yeah.
cowboy. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Well, and yeah.
yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say also, what I've learned from, what was the prairie guy's name? I always forget his name.
Yeah, the guy on Instagram that we love.
Yes, he talks about prairies all the time. Shoot, it might even be prairie something.
It's the
Anyway.
natural.
Yes.
Let me look them up real
something.
quick while you're talking.
Native.
That's it.
Native
Yep.
something.
Yeah. Native.
Anyway, you'll
plant
find
guy.
it. He had a reel about how we as humans actually need to sort of intervene. We, in like Western culture, I'm also reading Braiding Sweetgrass. Have you read that?
Oh
book?
no, I haven't. Yeah, no, I
It's
haven't yet.
worth a read. It's so
Yeah.
good. But it's the author is Native American, and she basically is saying like Western sort of like Christian ideology is that the human and nature are completely separate, but Native American ideology is very much like people are here for a purpose, and that purpose is to take care of the earth.
Right.
And
yes.
so this guy was saying like,
caretakers, stewards. Yeah.
yeah, and this guy was saying like we all in our, and I am the same way, like we all think we should just leave nature alone, like it should just be, you know, have a forest, let the forest do whatever it wants. But unfortunately there are so many invasives that are taking over, we have to get rid of those.
Mhm.
There are so many things that humans can actually do to help good growth in forests.
Yeah.
But we never think of it like that.
Yeah.
We
You
think
can encourage it.
just
Like, oh, just let it do. Yeah.
Yeah, let nature be, and it'll
Yeah.
figure it out. But it's like, well,
Right.
not necessarily.
Right. Because we're also part of nature. So, like, our impact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But I
So
love
his-
that idea of like that is our purpose
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Is to help the earth.
Be stewards. So it's the Native Habitat Project on Instagram.
That's
His
it.
name
Yeah,
is
yeah.
Kyle Leibarger. He's great. I love him. And he's always talking
Yes.
about, again, a lot of America was not trees until white people came through and planted trees. There were native grasslands, and they actually
Yeah.
do a lot of work for carbon sequestration that they don't get
Yeah,
any
a
credit
lot.
for.
Mhm.
So,
And what did I find out that like 99% of the grasslands in Illinois and some other state nearby there are gone from
Yeah.
what they used to be? Like
Yeah.
99%.
that's a lot. Yeah.
That's crazy. So it's almost like we should turn our yards into grasslands.
Maybe native wildflowers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's almost like that.
Almost like this. The culmination of this entire season is let nature do its thing, but give it a helping hand.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
With intention.
And don't cut down forests.
Please stop. Let Fern Gully let go.
Yeah, there is a movement for old growth forests and trying to protect old growth forests, which is so important.
Yeah.
So.
And there are a lot of conservation programs throughout the United States that work on like declaring wilderness areas, which are different from national parks. National parks can be developed. They can be rough, but wilderness areas have no, like trails. They're uncultivated, and like those are super important for allowing natural habitats to survive. So
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was season 4.
Yeah. Did you have a granola rating for that or no?
You know what? Not really, because it's. Okay. I was gonna give it a 3, because it's good and bad, but it's like it's kind of like last week when you were saying like it just kind of is, Yeah. I think there's so much good with trees are great. Plant trees at home. Go talk to your municipality. Get the subsidies for growing a tree at home. Take care of it.
See if your county gives away free trees, because that's what mine does.
Get a free tree. Yeah, there's free tree. The Arbor Day Foundation gives them away. Get a free tree, plant it, grow it, teach your kids about it. You can, but also
try to grow your own trees from like native
saplings.
Acorns.
Yeah, I have a friend who's growing avocado trees to have inside her house.
Oh, nice.
In pots. I was like, those aren't native, but okay. But
I mean, if it's in your house, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah. Grow trees, love trees, enjoy trees, and also hold the companies that we work with accountable to tell them that planting a tree in a place that a tree doesn't belong is not gonna make up for the fact that you have scourged the earth with your practices. And that's what we're about. Is what can I do as an individual that will eventually add up. It will never take the place of what corporations can do, but if I, walk instead of driving, if I bike, if I take the bus, if I, those are little things I can do. And that's what's important. So, okay, there you go. Tree planting programs, 101.
Awesome. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. This has been a glorious season. I know we said we would get Patreon done, and we might do it over the break. We're coming back. Let me check the calendar
I'm
here. But
biting my nails. I'm like,
I know, me too. All of my cuticles
so
are in shreds. Yeah.
We have so much stress going on.
Yeah, we're both under a lot of pressure. Yeah, it's the world right now. I feel like.
Yeah, I don't know what
anytime you talk to someone, it's like, hey, so did you see that Netflix show? It's like, no, my world is falling apart. You're like, yeah, me too.
Exactly. Truly. Oh my God.
I can't. My calendar won't. Google is doing something weird to me, and I can't look at my calendar.
Oh, for when we're releasing?
Yeah, let me just look. Luckily, I have 7 Google accounts, so...
So no big deal. Well, I was going to say, so next season, we're going to focus on travel, which we're really excited about.
Transportation and travel. It's going to be really... I think it's... Yeah, a lot of people were saying... Not a lot of people. One of my good friends, Maria, was saying, like, this season didn't really resonate with her because she's not a homeowner. And we tried to do, like, you can do compost at home. And, it is hard to do. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, we'll come back June 4th with travel and transportation, which I think electric cars... we have a lot of really cool episodes in there. I think a lot of, like, the myth... behind, like, is air travel really bad? And I think we're going to try and see if my sister will weigh in, because she does research on aerodynamics and fluid dynamics and reducing fuel usage for airplanes and stuff. So, yes.
Electric cars, and I also am curious, maybe I'll just do this on my own. I haven't looked at the list yet, but the cars that turn off when you're at a stoplight.
Yeah, I wonder what that does. Yeah, we should.
I've heard... one of my friends who also actually he works in he's like in physics anyway, he was saying like the worst part about cars is when you start them. So starting them and starting them and starting them and starting them is actually terrible. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I think that has changed. I think that was a
Oh,
rumor I
hopefully.
heard as well, and that actually idling is really bad. So
Okay.
like,
Okay.
or that the amount, like if you're idling for 20 minutes, that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing. I wonder if what it would be like sitting at a stoplight, if that matters, because
Yeah.
it's 5 seconds. But
Yeah.
if it's 20
Uh-huh.
minutes, yeah, you should turn your car off because the amount of
Right.
juice you use when you restart the car is much less than what you're using idling. But
Okay.
that's something we should definitely look into because I wonder about that too. But yeah, my
Yeah.
BMW, when I had a BMW for 6 months, it stopped at stoplights and I was like, oh, because it would restart
Yeah.
the minute you like put it back in drive or whatever.
I
Yeah.
just rented a car that did that, and I was like, "What is happening?" You don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like you have to do anything. It just
No,
does
it
it
just
on
does
its
it.
own. But
And I
it
think
is weird.
they probably did something with the fuel injection where it's less than it used to be when you
Yeah.
had to turn a key and push the gas and
Right.
all that stuff. Like, yeah, starting a 1967 Buick, you have to like, but like,
A little different.
thanks to fuel injection technology, that's probably not true anymore. But that's something
Yeah.
we'll definitely
Yeah.
look into. So,
Yeah. Cool.
yeah. Thank you, Tiffany. We'll be back June 4th.
Thank you, Kat.
And
Yeah, June
keep in touch
4th.
with us. Yeah.
I'll
Keep in
start the
touch with us
music.
keep in touch with us on Instagram. Follow us.
We're gonna try to keep our reels up. We'll see.
Yeah, so you can see our lovely faces, and let us know how you like this video format if you're watching on YouTube, because I know it's just Sean watching it over and over again, but I'd like to know from other people what they think.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, we will see you soon.
Yeah, have a great spring. Bye,
Yes.
Tiffany.
Bye.